Deep Space Nine, and the Enterprise docked. Look at the size. Look at the size comparison to the Enterprise, Jean-Luc's Enterprise D, and Deep Space Nine. That's the Playmates toy. I say it's like a model. It's great. One of the best. Certainly one of the biggest and one of the most detailed. And we're talking Deep Space Nine. Can I put it here? I could put it here. You see the Enterprise. There you go. Still see the Enterprise. We're talking Deep Space Nine. And we have to talk about it because Star Trek The Next Generation ended. It was over. It was going to the movies. It was going to Generations and First Contact. This was 1994. And so I said to myself, well, I sold a script to Next Generation. What's next? Deep Space Nine. And so I wrote a script. I was in college at the time. I was in my first year of college. So I was writing that between classes. I would show my buddies and like, ooh, you're trying to write another one, Will? Yep. Trying to do a Deep Space Nine, a DS9. And everybody, pretty much at Ramapo College in New Jersey, they loved Star Trek. And they would watch episodes with me, some of my roommates or whatever. Point is that Next Gen was over. I had to do Deep Space Nine and I loved it. So what to do? What kind of story will I concoct? So I loved Quark. I loved the Ferengi. And I said, let's do something that really shakes up the Ferengi. That's sort of, earthquake-like, seismic activity and shaking and an avalanche. So at the time, well, about a year or two before the presidential election, there was Ross Perot. And, he was this little billionaire guy from Texas. We're gonna change everything. We're gonna change everything. Had all this energy. Used to go on Larry King and all the talk shows. And I said, what if it was a Ferengi that was like Ross Perot, and he was coming in, and he was, it was a whole new, vibe, a whole new way of doing things for the Ferengi Alliance. And so I named the character Torep. So Perot spelled backwards. Of course, they changed it, and wonderfully so, to make it the Grand Nagus Zek, Wallace Shawn, one of my favorite actors. So that was awesome. And I actually was thinking as I was writing it, maybe I can do the Grand Nagus, Zek, but the writing guidelines as a freelancer, you would get them and it would say you can't do certain things. And they didn't really want you to do, like, for example, Next Gen, Guinan and Whoopi Goldberg, you couldn't do that. Ensign Rowe, whatever, Q. You could try maybe. I think one person did that, True Q. I think it was a freelancer, but it was sort of frowned upon. And that might have been a pitch. Again, there was a difference between scripting and pitches. So I submitted it. And what happened, and this was like, when, again, I still didn't have an agent at that time. No representation, no rep. So it was all on your own. You had to make the phone calls and deal with the, the scripting and everything, contracts on your own. So they sent the script back unread, and it said, you have gone over your allotment, because if you didn't have an agent, you couldn't submit more than 2 spec scripts. And so I had sold my Next Gen, and then I wrote another Next Gen that didn't sell. And I was like, wait a minute. But then once you get once you sell a script, which is incredibly rare, it's exceedingly rare to sell, they said your cap is off, your limit's off. So I had to go. And I had a call from a friend's house because our phone, my mom was really upset about the long distance back in the day. You had to pay for every call. So she had a block for long distance. I had to go over to a friend's house, and his mom was cool. Yes, you can make it, don't stay on too long, to call California, Paramount Pictures. Called, left a message. They weren't around. And Lolita Fatjow, that name, she called me back. Then I was back at my, college dorm at the time. And she's like, oh, we're sorry. Rick Berman was telling me that you can, of course, send anything you want, because you're sold to Next Gen. So there you go. So I sent it back thinking, well, maybe they're being polite, maybe, they'll take it. And they bought it. So they obviously read it and they bought, so that was awesome. It was what a, to do literally within that year, to do a Next Generation and then a Deep Space Nine. And then I got all the pitches, and then Voyager later. Actually, Michael Piller at the time was doing a show called Legend for UPN. I got a pitch for that. Sadly, that was canceled before I got a chance to ever pitch to it. Legend. It was sort of like a Western sort of cowboy science fiction with Richard Dean Anderson and John Delancey. Really fun show. Almost like Wild Wild West, that same Buckaroo Banzai, whatever, that, quirky sci-fi, sort of comedy, quirky sci-fi. But it was canceled before I could pitch. So that's about it. My Deep Space Nine scripting. Oh, and then of course me finding out that it was Grand Nagus, that it was going to be the Nagus and not Torup, which in one way was a little disappointing, but I'm like, it's the Nagus. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. And it was just, just so fun to see. And there you go. It was one of those things where if Deep Space Nine lasted for 7 years, and then of course Voyager, and then I pitched to Voyager, but I'm saying it was again one of those renaissance of Star Trek of times when you had multiple shows on the air, then you had the feature films, the novels, the pocket books were still going strong, comic books, video games, it was a cornucopia, it was a buffet. But before we go, let's look at it again, right? I think these are still available. Probably can get them on eBay. Playmates, incredible. If there was batteries, I never have working batteries, but the phasers will fire. Quantum torpedoes are actually photons for the time. And there you go. So I hope you guys are enjoying. We keep doing these live feeds. I love them. In honor of Cisco, a baseball. But one of those, hand exercises. So yeah, we keep doing them. I'm getting really great feedback for it, and we'll keep doing more. So live long and prosper, and we'll see you soon. I gotta end it. Yeah.